Here's how to remove a starter from the Lexus is350. This is a 06 model. This one's a rear wheel drive. So there's gonna be access panel bolt for the bolts for the headers right here. You can get 2 of them from here with a long extension and a swivel 12. And then I reckon I can get the last one that's down here from this gap, which is the front of the engine right here. And then the top ones are pretty easy to get to from up there. A lot of people loosen the engine mount from right here, this bolt. They'll jack it up and they'll be able to get the starter out. But in my case, somebody that worked on this previously decided to put a screw in there instead of a regular bolt. So I have to do it the long way, but then you gotta get these out, get this out the way, and then you should have plenty of room to get that starter out. I'll update it as I go along. Alright, so I forgot. First step was to remove the skid plate, which is just 10 mil bolts. But I was able to, if my camera would focus, I was able to get all the nuts from here. There's one there, and then there's one right next to it, right above there. You can see it peeking. And then the other one is over there. So you can get all 3 of them from this access panel right here. It just goes right here. And that's the location. So you just take this off. And then what I ended up using was just my ratchet. I think this is a 6-inch extension, and then 12-inch and deep swivel 12. And that'll get you, or that'll allow you to get all of those bolts off for the lower part of the exhaust manifold. And then these I will be getting off here shortly. I'm gonna move on to the top and I will show you guys from there. It's also a good idea to spray these down with some sort of lubricant. I just used some WD-40 I had laying around. I'm gonna let that soak while I get the top manifold bolts off. These are being real stubborn, so time to use a torch to heat this up and see if I can crack them loose. Alright, so I got both of them out using the torch. I didn't use too much heat, but I did have to use some more WD-40. I just sprayed it on there while it was still hot. And then I used my ratchet with the 14, and then I used my ratcheting wrench. You don't have to use a ratcheting wrench, just use a regular wrench if that's what you got. But I used those 2, and with some patience I was able to get these out without breaking them. Alright, so here are the top manifold bolts. There's one right there, and then there's another one right there. I believe there's the 3rd one back here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's right there. Let me see if I can get my light on it. Right there. I just used a regular, I didn't use this, but I just used my ratchet and my 12. No extension needed. I was able to get that easy peasy. Nothing was very difficult about that. Alright, one thing I forgot to mention is this O2 sensor connector, which runs back around where my hand is. There's a bracket on there holding the other part of the connector where you disconnect it. I was able to stick my hand, my left hand through here, and my right hand I was able to get around here. You just press down on it or on the other connector and pull, kind of like the spark plug right here. You would press down on this tab and then you would pull it out. Same exact concept back there. Alright, so the manifold's coming off. You gotta move this out the way while you pull on this. Once you're about here, you can shove your hand in here and use this to help you a little bit, and then it should come right out. Alright, so the exhaust manifold is now out. That took me about, I don't know, 3-4 minutes to get out. You just gotta move this out the way, and you kind of have to turn it a little bit. But as you can see, that's what the last person that worked on this did. That connector seems to be broken. Have to figure out what to do about that. And then they used the screw to hold that starter in. Oh, I lied. The bolt's up here. Wrong bolts. Whatever. So you gotta take that bolt out and that bolt out. Starter will come right out. And then you gotta disconnect this cable that runs to the terminal on the starter, which is just right behind here. So I turned the starter around so you guys can have a better look, but that's the cable I was talking about right here. And you just disconnect that and you make sure to put it back in the same spot on the new starter. Here should have a complete cover. If you don't, I would probably wrap it around some electrical tape or something alike, just so that it doesn't make contact with anything around it by chance. Alright, so I got the starter out. This was just a 13mm nut. It goes right here. There's a washer on here, I believe. Yeah, there should be. But yeah, starter's out. Time for the new one. Here's the new starter. Make sure everything looks the same. They look exactly the same. Except the new one doesn't have JB Weld all over it. Alright. And there's the washer I was telling you all about. That second one right there. Right above this. This one didn't have it. Alright, so you guys aren't fighting this cable like me for 15 minutes. That goes at an angle. It doesn't go straight up. It goes at an angle, or else you're not going to be able to get the nut on there and your hands will start cramping up. But got that on there. Next thing we need to do is tighten that down and then install everything how we took it off. Alright, so putting these exhaust manifold bolts on the lower end are quite difficult, but what I ended up using is just a magnetic 12mm socket. You can use a small extension. I didn't use one. If you don't have one, you can just use a regular 12mm socket, get some paper, and then just shove this in there and it should stay put just like a magnetic socket. You just want to make sure you hand thread them on first before you use any ratchet or anything. You don't want to cross thread that, or else this 3-hour job will turn into a 2-day job. And then this front exhaust manifold bolt, I was able to just squeeze my hand through down here. I don't remember, it was either here or here. You should be able to reach the stud and thread that one in by hand. You don't need a socket for that one. Using a wire brush, I just cleaned the threads off with a wire brush or a wire wheel. I just like to do that because it'll thread in a lot easier, and you know, just gets rid of that rust that was making these stubborn to get off. All right, here's a little recap of what I did. I moved this out the way just to be able to get my hands in there. Take this off, take this off. And then I got the O2 sensor back there with both hands. You can try using a pick. I just was able to get my hand through here and another one through down there. And then obviously disconnect the battery first before anything. That's still disconnected as of now. And then you're able to get all those manifold bolts through here up top. And the bottom ones, you're able to get through that access panel that I displayed earlier. But that pretty much wraps up the job, guys. And yeah.